You finish? To start. Good evening and welcome to yet another installment of Recount Update. With me tonight is PPP candidate Bishop Juan Edghill. And before we get started, Bishop, I'd like to take this opportunity to say to the nation, happy independence, happy 54th independence anniversary. On behalf of course, the People's Progressive Party, of behalf of myself and my household. And I trust that Guyana continues to go from strength to strength, and more importantly, with the People's Progressive Party uh, holding the reins of government, which is rightfully so in the near future. Bishop?
Good evening and happy independence to all of Guyana. How are you doing tonight?
Okay, I'm pleased to have you on the program. If we could begin first by having a brief synopsis on how the recount has been going so far. Of course, to state it for the record, we are displeased about the pace of the recount. There has been some commitment given by the chairman of GCOM within the last 48 hours that the 12 stations would have been increased by 2 to 14. We anticipated that would have occurred today. Has not yet been forthcoming. So we are hoping that we could have those additional stations and have the pace of the recount continue. Of course, today being day 21 of what was a proposal of 25 days. Bishop, are you hearing me?
Well, I'm trying to make sure I hear you well, so go ahead, yes.
So you are now. So if you could give me a brief synopsis of the recounts thus far, if I could just paraphrase what I was saying a short while ago. We continue to be dissatisfied with the pace of the recount and awaiting a further commitment by the chairperson of GCOM, retired Justice Claudette Singh, for the two additional stations, bringing the total number of stations to 14. Bishop?
Well, let me first of all indicate that we are at day 21 and we still have a tall order ahead of us. And that is not as a result of the unwillingness of the agents of the parties, minus the APNU, AFC, to work and to really get this process going. But what we have seen from the very beginning, particularly as it relates to Region 4, there is no discernible evidence that the APNU, AFC, and some operatives of GCOM would like to see those boxes in Region 4 count. So they have been moving at their own slow pace. This afternoon in my own station, we had a $1 for dollar approach. And I guess most Guyanese listening to me know that colloquial term. You're taking it $1 for dollar at your own dear time. The process is a good one. I believe that every day for the last 21 days, the point is being made clearly in the minds of Guyanese that number one, the statements of poll that the PPPC is in possession of that we got from GCOM on the night of the March 2nd, 2020 elections are accurate because the statement of recounts that are coming out from the boxes, every box in every region, no matter which region you count, the statement of recount largely mirrors the statements of poll that were issued on the night of March the 2nd. If there is any variation or any variance it is largely because of a one or a two, a vote that was rejected being counted for a party, or the APNU AFC seems to have decided that the reject envelopes is a supermarket for shopping for votes for the APNU AFC. So they are hunting in this rejected vote basket to find every reason to make rejected votes valid votes. Let me tell you, a vote is rejected if it has no mark for any party. Secondly, it is rejected if it has a mark for more than one political party. And thirdly, it is rejected if the voter could be identified in any way. The presiding officers across the country uniformly rejected any ballot that had two marks for two political parties. The APNU AFC have been coming up with fancy stories that says the voter intent was to vote for the APNU and AFC. But Michael, what is laughable and what is comical, even if all 4,000 and something rejected votes are awarded to the APNU AFC, they still cannot win the elections. And I don't think they're getting it. It would appear that we have a real mental health problem in that small cabal. The people who surround David Granger and the people who David Granger has given authority to, it seems that they have one thing in common. They are delusional. They have a mental health problem. They're unwilling to reason. They're unwilling to accept that they have been defeated. So what they're doing, they're putting operatives in these counting stations at the convention center who comes in there with their thug-like behavior. And I use that term guardedly because I like to respect individuals and respect people's character. But their behavior is thug-like. And what they're seeking to do is to discredit every box that the PPPC has the majority. And a box where they have a majority, it would appear that all the objections and the dilatory tactics and the semantics and the continuation of the pantomime disappears in that box. Let me give you an example. When we were counting boxes today.
I don't want us to get into too much details on this now. We're going to get there. But I want us to deal specifically as it relates to, I wanted us to spend some time discussing the actual process, not the details of the process. We're going to get there because there are instances also where there are absolutely no observations. I continue to use the word observations as against objections because that's what it's supposed to be, and apparently that's what it's not. However, there are absolutely no observations especially when it comes to the counting of boxes in South Georgetown, where the PPP gets 3, 4, 5 votes. Absolutely no objections. The objections are being made specifically in PPP strongholds, but we're going to get there. And I want us to, you were making an analogy in relation to the wanton objections in PPP strongholds and a paucity of objections in APNU AFC strongholds. There are also many instances of, as you rightly said, someone rightly said, it's a machine gun approach. You enter a room and you start shooting wildly in all directions, whether or not it makes sense. Speak a bit about that, Bishop.
Well, Michael, it would appear that there is a method to the madness. And let me explain, first of all. I have accused GCOM, and I say this respectfully, of doing research on behalf of the APNU AFC. Because an agent will come to the room and he will object to 19 numbers, inquire about these 19 numbers, because these are people who would have voted, either they are dead or they were out of the country, and they have since changed the language to be out of the jurisdiction on election day. When I've questioned out of the jurisdiction, what it means, if it's out of area, out of region, out of country, they say out of the jurisdiction. At the appropriate time, they will talk to GCOM what I mean by that. So they come with that kind of approach. They call out 90 numbers, 72 numbers, 84 numbers, and then the GCOM staff have to go through 5 or 6 lists sometimes, because every list has a different amount of ticks, to determine if on any of those lists, any of those serial numbers that were called, voted. Let's say, for example, they find 3. So GCOM will say, well, they have discovered these 3 are ticked, which meant they voted on March 2nd. The APNU AFC agent will then object to those 3 people. But the 82 or the 94 or the 101 that was raised, the GCOM staff is not allowed to record that on the observation report. So it comes across when the observation report is being read at the tabulation center in the evening as if they only objected to 3 or 5 or 7 when they would have been objecting to dozens. And what is worse is the time that is used to go through that process. Sometimes the time that is used to deal with those objections and the finding of these ticks, you could finish counting 200 votes. Because you could spend 45 minutes doing that, and when you go to actually count the 400 votes or the 350 votes, it takes you 45 minutes. So a lot of time, the APNU AFC, especially in Region 4, is trying to slow down the process by using these objections. But they were doing that on the East Bank. Now that we are in South Georgetown, like for example today, I dealt with boxes from the West Roungveld Secondary School, the East Roungveld Life Improvement Center, the East Roungveld Secondary School. Those are boxes that the APNU AFC are extremely happy about. They got 250 votes, 248 votes. The PPPC got 3 and 6. They got 318 votes, and the PPP probably got 16 or 17. You don't find that same approach in South Georgetown. Everybody who voted in South Georgetown are alive, and they were in the country. Unlike the people who voted elsewhere across the country where the PPPC won. So apart from it being time wasting, it is clear that they are operating in an environment to seek to create doubt, to attack the credibility of the polls. But Michael, I want to remind you and your audience tonight that this is a recount. The word re simply means to do again. A count was already made on March 2nd. A recount is checking back to see if the count of March 2nd is accurate or there is any variance. What we are finding for the last 21 days, apart from the pantomime and the sideshows that Harmon and the lunatic group, the lunatic fringe group, I should say. That's what I prefer to describe them as, a lunatic fringe group. Apart from Harmon and that lunatic fringe group, the count is showing that the numbers in the box show that the numbers on the statements of poll posted by the PPPC since March the 5th are the numbers that really the people of Guyana voted for. They are authentic. I have noticed another issue that, since we're talking about the process, that I want to address. You know, before every ballot is counted, it is scanned with a UV light, and the GCOM staff checks for the security features on that ballot paper. I now heard Joseph Harmon pontificating in a very asinine manner that they're now fake ballots. I've been sitting at the Ottochong Convention Center every day for 21 days. We have agents in every station. Not one GCOM staff, not one APNU agent, not one agent from the PPPC or any other party has encountered a ballot that did not have the security features known to GCOM. So how we got fake ballots now?
I gather you're referring to the rant about 80,000, something about 80,000. I because of its asininity, I would prefer not to repeat it. But I figure you're speaking about the same thing.
Well, that was one, 86,000 votes that he was talking about. But he went on to say that the PVPC stuffed fake ballots in boxes. Now, what we have here is the same behavior that we had after the passage of the no confidence vote, an unwillingness to accept defeat. So every day they're coming out with a new line, a new tale, a new story, or a new series of lies and untruths. And what they sometimes what they say today is they contradict what they said yesterday. What they're talking about now bores a hole in the case that they were talking about earlier. For example, if it is true, let's say giving Mr. Harmon some amount of attention so we could do the math. If it is true.
That contradicts what Mr. Granger had said.
Well, listen up. If it is true that the PPP rigged by 86,000 votes, deduct that from the number that we won by in 2015. The PPPC should have only gotten about 110,000, 115,000 votes at the 2020 elections. And if you go to GCOM's website, the numbers that Harmon wants Granger to be sworn in on, which includes Mingo's fictitious numbers of Region 4, shows that the PPC way above what Harmon is talking about. So I don't know what basis he's using to come up with these concoctions, because that is what it is, a concoction. You know, it's Independence Night, and we should have been talking about Guyana's 54th anniversary as an independence and how we'll be going forward, how we will prosper this nation. But look who we have to be dealing with, a lunatic fringe group who are desperate for power, who is desperately afraid of a change of government because of their corruption, their wickedness, their misdeeds, their evil that they would have done over a period to benefit themselves, enrich themselves and their families and the small group of cronies who are around them. It's a lunatic fringe group. And they are seemingly now being able to convince Granger that, you know, the elections, the PVP rigged the elections, so you won it. I really don't understand if we are still human beings with rational minds, if we are still people who are logical, or we have now moved into an environment where being illogical and being irrational is a fad. So that people comes out and go to the tent, speaks to the media, publish things on Facebook, as if nobody is hearing them, nobody will fact check them, nobody will rebut them, nobody will examine what they say today as compared to what they said before, and they are continuing. These are people who have serious mental health issues. And this is something that President Irfan Ali, when he's sworn in, will have to really deal with, because it looks like we have a mental health crisis in Guyana among some people. We will really have to do something in our medical institutions to help some people, because I don't understand this craziness. This is serious madness.
If I could bring us back to some of the disclosures that have been made, and there was specific reference to, I believe in my own view, I believe it's a very strategic reference as well, into malpractices regarding the joint services vote. I think there was some disclosure, not disclosure, there was some allegation that 10,000 joint services votes were not counted. I think many comments in recent times have delved into the realm of the illogical.
Well, let me tell you, Michael, again, take it from a person who's watching the process every day. I counted boxes today that had disciplined services votes. Disciplined services votes are intermixed into these boxes. Some stations, 36, some stations, 35. Listen to the lies that are being peddled by Harman and company to try to rile up some amount of sentiment among the joint services. How the joint services ballots were not stamped with the 6-digit stamps, so as a result, their votes were rejected. There was not one single ballot in any box that I counted today, or I've counted in the last 21 days, where there was an intermix of disciplined services vote, where there was a ballot without the 6-digit stamp. So that's the first thing. Let me tell all our men in uniform, men and women in uniform, your votes have been properly counted like the votes of every other Guyanese that went to the elections on March 2nd. You voted days ahead, and your votes were properly counted. It was stamped.
Is this a strategic approach to say an untruth deliberately to the men and women in uniform?
Well, whatever is the plan that Granger and his cabal has of not giving up power at the end of the recount, it would appear that they need the solidarity and the emotional and tactical support of members of the disciplined forces to continue to keep them in power. So this narrative that they are creating is that the PPP disenfranchised you. That is the reason why we are unable to get the numbers to remain in office. And you have to come out and defend us, or you have to do something to keep us there. And they are selling that as a way of affecting the psyche of the men and women in uniform. This is psych ops. This is what the military types in the APNU AFC government is known for. And that is what they're seeking to do. But the truth about it, they don't even have 100 ballots that you don't have a 6-digit stamp on. You don't have 100.
And this is total, national.
That is what exists now. So I don't know where these people are concocting. I don't know if they have a bad dream at night. They have some messenger that is coming from a dark place, bringing news to them. And it's just a matter of imaginary thinking that they concoct these fictitious stories and try to sell it as if it is true to the Guyanese people. That is why I'm saying either they have split personalities, either they're downright devious. It's either they have a group of people who are hatching diabolical plots, who are having sinister schemes being manufactured on a daily basis, because the things that they're saying, they're not grounded in truth, and it's not grounded in fact. And it is so disappointing that these are people who want to hold themselves out as leaders of the nation, people who you should trust to govern your nation, and that's the way they're behaving. So the issue of no 6-digit stamps on ballot papers as a way of disenfranchising members of the joint services is a total fabrication. And I want to, you see, Michael, I made this choice of sitting there every day for this recount because I want to speak authoritatively to people who could be carried away by the mischief of these miscreants. Let me say to the men and women of the joint services, Bishop Edghill has been sitting there for 21 days. Your envelopes are in the P21 in the boxes. Your votes are being counted. The 6-digit stamps are on your votes and they are in the total tally. You should not have any fear that you have been disenfranchised. And that is coming from someone who is sitting there watching the system. And I don't have the luxury of people like Mr. Harmon and others of telling lies. I have a conscience to live with and a God who I fear. So I'm telling you the truth. So this propaganda that they are spreading and they're trying to create mischief among the men and women in uniform, whether it's the police or the army or the fire service or the prison service, and you're trying to create this frenzy among the joint services. I'm pulling the rug from under their foot tonight. They're trying to use you, the men and women in uniform, to prop them up in power so that they could continue their corruption, they could continue their theft of the treasury, they could continue their squandermania, benefiting their friends, their children, their close relatives and their cronies, and continue to suffer you. They're the ones who took away the bonus from the joint services. Now when the joint services vote and they're not seeing the kind of results that they're looking for, they're saying that the PPP disenfranchised the joint services. The men and women of the joint services voted their conscience. They voted for a government that will care for them, that will take care of them, and ensure that their promotion is not being interfered with because of politics. They voted for a government that is progressive, inclusive, a government that will take Guyana into the next wave of prosperity. And that is what the PPPC government under President Irfan Ali will do when this recount is finished. So, men and women of the joint services, let me clear this up for you tonight. You should tell Mr. Harmon, hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more, no more. He is supposed to be a military man coming from that background, and he's trying to use you as men and women in uniform to prop him up in political power so he could continue with his multi-billion-dollar corruption scandal with lands and businesses and investments, and getting his son and son-in-law and all the others getting involved in corruption to make money to profit him while they pilfer the public treasury. And the men and women of the joint services must not be used in such a manner, such scant regard. So I'm very, very emotional and upset about that kind of a peddling of nonsense coming from Congress Place and the rigors of this election.
Okay, former PNC Prime Ministerial candidate Stanley Ming has now entered the political discussions regarding the March 2nd regional and general election. And his comments more specifically about a bloated list. His comments are taking us back to the issue of the list, the official list of electors. Can you agree, can you identify with those concerns he has expressed? Is there some vested interest on his part as it relates to these most recent comments?
Well, Michael, I'm glad that you asked.
Seemingly and suddenly out of the political wilderness.
I want you to notice something. Any Guyanese who speaks the truth is viciously attacked by the PNC machinery. Any Guyanese of upstanding, whether it was Joe Singh, whether it's Kip Nascimento, whether it's Sir Ronald Sanders, whether it's Sridat Rampal, whoever spoke, viciously attacked. And then you have this group who comes out of the woodworks. Let's talk about Stanley Ming. The Demerara Harbor Bridge that Patterson was planning to build, that they had that corrupt contract for the feasibility study, the bridge suddenly take a turn to land on land owned by Stanley Ming on the West Demerara. He knew that he would have made a big windfall from compulsory acquisition of that land for the bridge that took a sudden turn to land on his property. He knows that a PPPC Demerara Harbor Bridge will not land on property owned by him, and the millions of US dollars he plans to make off of that corrupt transaction will be lost. So he's vested. He comes out with this big fancy story. But what is the bottom line? Just over 400,000 people voted. So what's the problem with the list? Even if the list had 660,000, nobody who should not have voted, voted. It's 400, just over 400,000 people voted. The scrutiny in the polling place was strong. Every presiding officer had a color copy of the folio. You know what that meant? Every person who walked into a polling station, they had a color photograph of all of the facial features of that person. They had to compare it with identification, whether it's ID card or a passport. And if you didn't have an ID card and a passport, you had to take an oath of identity. And that was witnessed by the APNU agents. It was witnessed by the PPPC agents and the agents of all the other parties. A process that people had to go through before they voted. So Stanley Ming is looking after his own pocket. He's looking after his own pocket. And I don't like attacking people personally, but when you do things like that to confuse people, we have to tell people the reason why you're doing that. You are singing for your supper. You're getting in on the action. Mr. Ming should explain what is his business arrangement with Joseph Harmon and his son-in-law. Mr. Ming should explain what is his business arrangement with the APNU AFC and people who he is dealing with, and the profits that's supposed to come to him that will be interfered with a PPPC victory that he's concerned about. So everybody did house the claims and objections. We had a claims of objections period. Cathy Hughes, with her part of the pantomime, came and says it was a reduced time for claims and objections. Another lie. This was an expanded claims and objections where the commission voted 28 days for claims and 7 days for objection, and it ended up going 35 days for claims and 7 days for objections. And she's calling that a reduced period. Every party participated. We went to the fields. We ensured that we had a list that everybody could live with. We went to the elections. Mr. Granger was going to be sworn in 4 times. 4 times he was going to be sworn in on these same results coming from that same list.
4 attempts.
When he realized.
4 attempts.
4 attempts.
Yeah.
4 attempts. He gathered his crowd and promises people, getting people dressed in uniform to march and so on 4 times. Well, probably had his Bible to lift up his hands and say, this is the day that the Lord has made again.
I've seen videos and photos of the army all dressed up in ceremonial garb.
Well, I'm telling you, people were dressed up for swearing in on the same results that came from the same list. The only problem with this election, Michael, and your audience listening, is a man named Clement Mingo who made a fictitious declaration of Region 4. Which
brings me to the next point, and there continues to be absolutely, there isn't an iota or a scintilla of comments emanating from the APNU FC camp regarding what is now revealed about the work put out by Mr. Mingo. In fact, Mr. Mingo has practically disappeared, but his figures are there for all to see. And there is absolutely no comment about that aspect of the elections, but every quite possibly fictitious, non-existent aspect of the elections is being brought up?
Well, Michael, where's the issue? The recount should have lasted for 25 days. So the APNU AFC knows that at the end of that time, numbers will have to be published for every region. And Mingo and his cabal will be exposed. So what they're seeking to do is to slow down the counting of Region 4 and to create mischief and this new kind of lies and propaganda of the other regions that Harmon is coming out with, 86,000 illegal votes, missing poll books, fake ballots, and all the excuses to create confusion in the minds of the Guyanese people, to take them away from the reality of when Region 4 is finished counting, it will show that Mingo's declaration was fake and fictitious, and the PNC APNU AFC lost the elections and the PPPC won the elections. That is what they're seeking to do. So it is the party that aided and abetted and would have benefited from a rigging declaration of Mingo is now turning around to accuse the winning party, who had no political control of the election machinery on election day, of rigging. That is the state of affairs. It is unbelievable that people will be so brazen, bold-faced, and presumptuous to say some of the things that they are saying.
You pointed to the issue of the poll books, and there continues to be observations made about the missing poll books, and there are lots of discussions outside of the counting arena from the other side about missing poll books. Are poll books really missing? Are they being produced? And from where, and if they are missing, where are they missing from?
Well, I can tell you two things, Michael. The poll book was not supposed to be in the ballot box. The poll books is part of the RO's package. The presiding officer at the close of poll prepares an envelope that it goes to the returning officer. In that envelope is supposed to be the poll book that tells you on page 1 who was present when the poll opened, who witnessed the amount of ballots that were available, and that poll book will tell you about all who voted with oath of identity, those who had proxies, those who voted to assist the blind, and it would also tell you on page 8 all who were present when the count was done and the box was closed. That poll book goes to the RO, the returning officer. I have been in stations where I have seen the poll book show up in the ballot box. So that's one thing I want to know. And secondly, especially in South Georgetown, where the PNC got 318 and 250 and 245, and the PPPC got 3 and 6 and 17. You don't find poll books. You even got a ballot box without any counterfoil. The counterfoil is to tell you how many ballots were issued, and you got a ballot foil. But we're not making a big fuss about that, because what you find, if you got a poll book in the box, it's a case where the presiding officer did something that his training should have told him not to put the poll book in the box. The DROs, the deputy returning officers, who would have supervised a certain amount of stations, when they came to collect those ballot boxes on the night of election, they checked with the POs, the presiding officers, with the poll books. You had to give a discharge when you're handing over your box with your poll book. So GCOM must be explaining to the nation, where are the poll books? That is what GCOM should be telling us. But I don't want to make the poll books a big issue, because the poll books don't change the count in the box. We are in a recount. And what you are checking for is something called P7. Every time you hear P7, that is the envelopes with votes inside. And in a recount, you're going into the P7 and you're checking how much votes for Change Guyana, how much votes for the Citizens Initiative, how much of the LJP, the URP, the PRP, or the ANOG, and how much votes to the APNU AFC, and how much votes to the PPPC. And when you finish with those P7s, you prepare a document called a statement of recount. And then you match that statement of recount with the statement of poll to make sure that what was declared on the night of the election is what you're finding in the box. I counted a box today that there was no P21, which are the envelopes for the discipline services votes. Every discipline service vote comes in a separate envelope. When you open the envelopes and you stamp it and you count it, you're supposed to pack all those pink envelopes and put it in a package called P11. We have information. The box got 36 disciplinary service votes. The information on the ballot account got 36, but you don't find 36 pink envelopes in the box. What should we say? The box was stuffed by 36 votes that were not discipline services votes? That's not why we are there. We are there for the count. GCOM record shows that they deposited 36 votes into that box. What the man did with the P21 envelope, GCOM will find out that. But the votes are in the box. It matches with the counterfoil, and it matches with the 36 that is deposited. And when you do your auditing of it and you check the numbers, and you add up all what the various parties got, along with spoiled votes and rejected votes, it must balance back to the agreed total. And that is what we need to be doing. And that is what we're doing for 21 days. So Mr. Harmon, Mr. Aubrey Norton, and I don't know about these crazy other fringe elements that you have, Mahaipal and Ganesh and some of these, I don't know what you want to call, we want to call them.
If I could move the discussion forward, and your flag continues to remind me that this nation is currently observing its 54th independence anniversary. My comment, it comes against the backdrop that we have gotten congratulatory messages from across the world. One most notably is from the United States Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. In essence, he said to us, and as Guyanese, you would be taken aback when you are told by possibly the sole world power, happy independence anniversary. Now go behave yourself and do the right thing.
Well, Michael, you know, I feel ashamed as a Guyanese and as a leader in Guyana. Suriname had an elections. Suriname already knows the winner. The people of Suriname saw their votes being counted live.
Bishop, I want to be sure about what we're saying. Suriname had an elections yesterday.
Yes.
Okay.
So, and they already know the winner.
So the declaration of winners 3 months later is not the new normal. It's abnormal.
It's not the new normal. No, it's not the new normal. These people saw their votes being counted live. Live. I mean, Michael, we had to be fighting to get votes recounted. Then we had to fight to get it recounted live. We'd have put audio live. And even when certain things are happening in the station, NCN, you could imagine, NCN, the government-controlled television station, jams stations off because they don't want people outside to hear what's going on in the stations at particular times. Now, when you have to have all these world leaders in clouded diplomatic language, slapping you around the head, wringing your ears, lashing you on your back, go and do what is right. Behave yourself. If you want to line with us, behave properly. This is a group of democratic people. If you're not a democracy, you can't hang out with us. You can't benefit from us. You can't come around us. And I'm a Guyanese. that have to sit and listen, even though they're using diplomatic language. The interpretation is behave like a human being, behave reasonable, behave like if you're intelligent, behave like if you are cultured, behave like if you are learned, do what is right. Democracy has rules. When you lose an election, you're like a tree that loses all of its leaves in the fall. And in the spring, it comes alive again. What is so difficult about giving up power? In 2015, I was in government as part of the Donald Ramotar cabinet. President Ramotar, I sat with him the day when he called President Granger just before he left for his swearing in and says, I'm leaving the keys with the security at State House. He gave up power and told Granger, I am not in agreement with the results, but I'm going to do what is right. President Ramotar did that. I was sitting with him when he made that call, and he told him where he's leaving the keys to State House, and we left government. Myself and Dr. Roger Luncheon and Gail Teixeira and Priya Manichan and others journeyed every day to go and hand over government to Harmon and Jordan and Nigel Hughes and all the people who they sent there to take over from us. And we gave them everything that they needed to know to take Guyana and carry it forward as a democratic country. Now they have lost the elections. Come on, man. You lost the no confidence motion. You held up this country for 14 months. Your lunatic behavior, insulting the intelligence of the people about 33 and 34 and Charan Das and all the various stories that you concocted. The CCJ still ruled that you lost the no confidence motion. You lost an election. We're now having a recount that is showing clearly that you lost the election. The results that came out by way of the statements of poll, except the ones that were altered and doctored by Mingo, show that you lost the elections. The only votes that should have been counted is Region 4, not the whole country. But we agreed to count the whole country. And now that we're counting the whole country, what is the difference? The statements of poll and the statements of recount mirror, except for variance of 1 and 2 here and there.
No, there will be variance. That's the very nature of polling, and it's a point I want to make.
Because the margin of human error.
The nature of polling always caters for the margin of error. So here or there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 votes here or there. It's perfectly normal within the context of polling. However, what is not normal is the production of death certificates. So for people who would have died, the production of those certificates not authorized by families, bringing in legal implications to perhaps the Department of Citizenship, the General Register Office, speak to the issue.
Well, Michael, when the APNU AFC government degutted immigration and the General Registrar's Office from the Ministry of Home Affairs and placed it in the Ministry of the Presidency, Department of Citizenship, and put Felix to run it, the whole country knew that we're in for problems. Because it's like the Ministry of Social Cohesion. We knew it was a slush fund for political mobilization for the PNC across the country. These are things we knew. We said it in Parliament, in the debates. I said it, others said it. It's just manifesting now. The issue is, even if Felix, using immigration records, that because he's a Minister of Citizenship and getting birth certificates or death certificates or whatever fake printed, and you bringing it to GCOM, that's not the place for that. Democracy is, the numbers show that the PPPC has won the government, the president is sworn in, you go to the court based upon the Constitution with an elections petition. That is what the PPPC did in 2015. Donald Ramatar conceded.
Of course, that petition has not yet been heard.
Never been heard. And you know who helped to block it? Lowenfield. The person who should have been the person who should have facilitated the hearing of the petition to vindicate GCOM has done everything in the courts using Roysdale Ford, who is now a candidate for the PNC, to block the hearing of that petition. So they know that the whole issue of elections petition is one that they're running away from because they know what they did with ours. And they are afraid that probably we will do the same. But we are not like that. We don't control the judiciary. We can't tell a judge when to hear a petition or not. But you know what they did, and the whole world knows what they did with that 2015 petition.
Our time is almost gone, Bishop. I want to make a comparison. This specifically deals with the 54th independence message by Mr. Granger and the 54th independence message by President-elect Dr. Irfan Ali. And one would make a comparison. For example, an excerpt of Mr. Granger's message reminds Guyanese of Guyana's sovereignty and its will and its right to determine its own destiny. This is juxtaposed against Dr. Ali's reference to the developmental part of Guyana, the call for national unity, and the call for peace and harmony, and for Guyanese to put country first and to address the issues that confront us today. Comment on those briefly, please.
Let's compare and contrast. Granger is a man who is desperate to the point of even insulting our international and developmental partners, because that whole thing about Guyana being a sovereign state and must be allowed to govern its own affairs is to tell some of those international and developmental partners, mind your own business and don't interfere with what's going on in Guyana here because I got to stay in power. That is what he's saying to them. He's a desperate man, has no future, no vision for Guyana, has destroyed the economy, has torn it down. Compare that to young Irfan Ali. In his message, he's not yet in government, but he's already telling people, I have formulated the strategies, the pathway to bring us out of this economic downturn that we've had because of COVID-19, because of Granger, because of the no confidence motion, and all of the difficulties we've had. How are we going to revive Guyana? How are we going to include everybody? How are we going to work with our international partners to help us to make Guyana better? How are we going to secure prosperity for all Guyanese? Visionary, forward-looking, accommodating, inclusive. That is what you want for Guyana. Not a desperate man who wants to protect his image that he has protected to be decent, honest, and a man of integrity. But he has been found wanting. He's been weighed in the scales, and he has been found wanting. Desperation. He's taken Guyana to a path of isolation. Irfan Ali is taking Guyana to a path of prosperity, embracing the world's culture of democratic norms, where you accept your sovereignty, but you understand that in a global environment, you need each other, you look out for each other, you embrace each other, you work with each other for the benefit of all. I want to touch on another issue briefly because we are practically out of time, and this requires a very abbreviated response. This deals specifically with the weaponization of the COVID task force, the potential
I have been made privy to some information that there is active consideration to complete lockdown of Guyana when the current lockdown period expires. That has to be juxtaposed against the current financial state of the country and the current financial state of its citizens. And this is a cross support base. This has nothing to do with who represented or who voted for which party. The
Well,
COVID-19 has serious implications on individuals and dire implications as we speak. You're asking people to stay in without the ability to earn, without sufficient provision, possibly. And what are you doing for people as a government? And this is your comment in closing.
well, Michael, it is a sad thing when health is being used as a weapon to suppress and politically control a people. Right now, we can get more stations open at Arthurtown Convention Center because of that same COVID task force that is not giving the GCOM chairman the permission to go ahead.
Which,
Harmon
which
and
I
Vol
insist is not necessary.
it's not necessary because she should be making her own decisions.
Absolutely.
Harmon, Valda Lawrence, Karen Cummins, Moses Nagamutu, and all of them who sit in that COVID-19 task force are people with vested interests. They are candidates to the poll for the March 2nd, 2020 elections. They know they lost the elections. They need to get out of government and give the duly elected people a chance to govern and hold them accountable as a responsible opposition. They use the COVID-19 task force to keep out the character center. Now people have genuine fears. I have people sending me messages. And people are genuinely afraid that as the count comes closer down to the end and the declaration of Region 4 will show that the PPPC won the elections and Mingo fictitious thing was fraudulent, Harmon and his cabal will use the COVID-19 issue to escalate, whether it's false positives or what, to create an environment of a lockdown so they could politically control the environment. The fact that people are sending that message and have those fears tells you how much people don't trust the people who are running this country presently. And you have to be a person of a special kind to use people's health issues to politically control an environment. As a human being, I want every Guyanese to be safe. I want no Guyanese to die as a result of COVID-19. I want fathers and mothers and children and grandparents, everyone to be happy, families to be together. I want our business people to be able to earn. I want our economy to be able to leapfrog into the next level of prosperity and development. I want our productive sectors to be able to work, and we have to balance it. I don't agree with using COVID-19 to politically oppress people. And I have the view, based upon what I am seeing and the multitudes of people who've been talking to me, that this present group is moving in that direction. And I should say they should take warning. They better have take warning, because a people only accept up to a certain point. You could heat the water, but after a while it boils.
Bishop, I'm hopeful that we could continue this discussion. Our time is gone. Of course, we are having some discussions relating to the recount of the March 2nd, 2020 general and regional elections. And of course, most of our discussions this evening centered around all the peripheral issues and shenanigans that within that process. I thank you for joining me, Bishop Juan Edghill, candidate of the People's Progressive Party Civic. I'm your host, Michael Gordon. Good night.